Hey, I'm Allison. I'm a literacy specialist and I share literacy teaching ideas on my blog, Learning at the Primary Pond. And today I'm coming to you live to share a little bit about how and why I use writing folders in the K-2 classroom. Now, you might already have my writing folder tools freebie because I've been sharing those for like 2 going on 3 years now. If you don't, definitely get it. I put the links for the English and Spanish versions in the post. But regardless of if you have them or not already, I'm going to go more in depth on how I use them and why I do things. So that is what we're going to be showing us. Let me know you're here, say hi, and let me know if you use writing folders or something different in your classroom. So like I said before, I have them in English and Spanish. Both of those links are in the post there, but let me show you what's inside the folder. So I guess first of all, why folders? Well, the way I do writing is in kindergarten, first and second grade anyway, is I have my kids write in little booklets, okay? They don't write in notebooks because to me, these little booklets more show them that they're writing books, right? They're making books, they're authors. And another thing, a little trick that I love about having them write in booklets is when they're learning beginning, middle, end, you teach them, okay, one page is beginning, the next page is middle, and then the last page is, oops, I stapled it upside down, the end. But so that really drives the point home of this is the beginning of your book, middle, and end. So that's why I love using the little booklets. Hi, this is Hey, thanks for tuning in. Anyway, so we are not necessarily writing in notebook. It's not that I never use notebooks, but for writing, when little ones are writing in notebooks or journals or what have you, sometimes they get really confused about like, where's the beginning? Where's the end? Is this a story I finished? Is it not finished? When you have them write in booklets, it just becomes a little bit clearer. Do I have writing on every page? Is there a picture? And so that's why I use the folders, because we can put these little stapled booklets or loose sheets, depending on how old your kids are, we can put these stapled booklets in the writing folder. And speaking of putting the booklets or the writing in the folder, I have my kids keep one side for pieces of writing that are still in progress. That's green for go. And then on the other side of the folder, this is where pieces of writing that are finished, those go on the red sticker side. So that's how they keep it organized, so they know when they open up their writing folder every day, okay, do I need to continue working on something, like I've got something on the green side, or do I get to start something new? Because we all know that sometimes they forget that they're working on something and they go to start a new piece, but really there's something that's unfinished already in their folder. So that's why I use folders, and that's how we keep them organized. Now, as far as what type of folders, I like to actually just buy them folders because I want everybody to have the same kind, and sometimes even if you put it on the supply list, it doesn't quite come in just like you want it. So I like either sturdy cardboard, or this type is more like plasticky folders, just something that's not going to rip really easily. And then the other thing I like is I like for them to have these little 3-pronged like middles. So when I have them use tools, which I'm going to talk about just in a minute, all this stuff is free in the post, but when I have them use these tools, they can stick them in the middle of their writing folder. They can still keep all their papers, unfinished here for green and finished for red, and it's just very organized. And I guess the reason why I started wanting them to have these tools available is because anchor chart space in the classroom is always limited, right? We can make a chart or have a tool for them up, but A, depending upon where the kiddos are sitting in the room, they may not be able to see it super well. And then B, the other issue is that we run out of space, right? There's not room for everything. So having them have these little printable tools in the middle, it's kind of like having a mini anchor chart, and it's right in front of their face, right? It's a little bit harder for them to forget, hey, I got to use my alphabet chart, when it's right there. I have them keep their writing folders out on their table or their desk while they're working, so it's just right there for them. So that's why I love using the little pronged section. And this is where the writing folder tools go. So I'm going to go through most of the tools here. The first one is just an alphabet chart. And this is helpful for, if you have a different one, maybe you have handwriting formation on yours, or maybe you use these just to remind kids how to form the letters. But in kindergarten and first grade, even in second grade too, it's helpful for getting them to spell words. So at the beginning of the year, their writing folder actually has nothing in it. There are no, I have a prong section, but it's totally empty. There's, whoops, that's on the page. There's nothing in it, okay? So they start the year and there's nothing in it. And then what I'm doing is I will have one of these charts either under the document camera or just displayed enlarged somewhere, and I'm showing them how to write words using this alphabet chart. So I'm gonna say something like, okay, boys and girls, I'm gonna, write this sentence, and let's say one of the words is, I don't know, table, right? Okay, I'm gonna stretch out the word table, table. The first I hear the sound, t. Now I'm gonna look on my alphabet chart and find a picture that starts like t. So where, actually, you know what, I shouldn't have used table because table is actually here. Let's say that I'm spelling the word top, okay? So I hear the sound t, t, that matches the t for table, so that tells me that I need to write the letter T, and then I keep going, ta, ah, ah. Okay, now I hear the ah, that's like in octopus, the O, so I write the O. So basically you're having them use this alphabet chart to find pictures that start like the sounds that they're hearing when they're stretching out words. So that's what this is for. And this is a really handy tool that once I've modeled it a couple of times, I make it a big deal and I say, okay, now you're gonna get your very own alphabet chart for your writing folder. And I typically like to put these on cardstock just so that they last a little bit longer, because that is one that stays in there throughout the year. But so I'll print these on cardstock. I like to have them in color just because, it's a little bit more eye-catching for them. But I do have a black and white version in that freebie, so if that color doesn't work for you, feel free to use the black and white. But so this goes in their writing folder, and it pretty much stays there for the whole year. When we get to things like blends and digraphs, then I also have another chart that goes with that. Now what I'm showing you here, this is like a fully decked out writing folder. We start the year, like I said, with them blank. After I model how to use a tool repeatedly, that's when I then give them that tool in their writing folders. And I just go ahead and put it in myself because it's hard for the little ones to do the brads and all that. So I do it for them, and I make it a big deal whenever they get a new tool. So I'm adding to their writing folders throughout the year. So this was the blends and digraphs chart, like I mentioned, just again, same thing, okay? I'm writing the word chin, or whatever I hear, like cheese. I know they start the same, so I'm gonna write the CH. So just another tool, again, you'd wanna model and then put it in their folders. All right. Okay, so the next tool I have is the writing process, and this is really handy. I mean, all year round for sure, but especially at the beginning of the year when you're teaching them the different stages, if that's what you teach them. It just has little visuals for the stages in the writing process. I may take this out later on in the year just because they kind of get the hang of it. But something that you could do is you could have them keep this in their folder, and then maybe they have like a little sticky note or something else that, like a little arrow, those little Post-it arrows. Maybe you have them track. Am I on the planning stage? Am I in drafting, revising, editing, publishing? The writing process is just something that, for me anyway, takes my kiddos a long time to grasp. So if you have a little visual sticky or something, you can have them just have this out at their table, and then you come around, you say, okay, well, where are you in the writing process? And they should be able to show you. That's not something I do all the time, but if it's a focus, then that's definitely something you can consider putting in their writing folder and having them monitor. The next tool I want to show you is great for kinders or first graders when they're learning to write sentences, and it's just a little writing scaffold. So it tells them the different steps in the process of writing a sentence. So basically the first thing is think of an idea, then the second thing is plan your sentence. And my rule of thumb for the kids is I say you need to say your sentence to yourself 3 times, because at this age, sorry, I'm trying to put that down, at this age, just the process of them coming up with a sentence and actually remembering it, like that's work in itself, right? So let's say I'm gonna write, we went home. So I say it to myself 3 times, we went home, we went home, we went home. So you got that repetition. You want to have them count the number of words on their fingers. That's super helpful. And then I'm not able to show you and do this at the same time, but what I'm going to show you is I have the kids then draw a line for each word in the sentence, because if you teach kinder and first graders, then you probably know that often what you get is a string of letters. So we want to move kids in that direction of, okay, I'm hanging on to my sentence. I know how many words are in it, 3, we counted. So I need to write a distinct word for a distinct word in that sentence. So going back to that sentence, what did I say? We went home, or I went home. I would have them say it 3 times, then I'd have them draw a line. We went home. And then maybe I can put my period. So hopefully you can see that okay. I know it's a little bit far away. But this is a strategy that I model whole group, so that's why it's in this little scaffold here. I don't require my kids to do this to plan their sentences, but what you'll find if you're consistently modeling this, say it 3 times, count the number of words, draw the lines, and then they would write, I went home. If you're consistently modeling that process when you write things, you'll find that a lot of your kids will pick up on that and they'll do it too. It's not something that I require because some kids are able to, come up with a sentence and separate it, or that's just not a strategy that works for them. But when I model it, kids that need it can use it. And this basically just goes through that process like visually with some little pictures of how to do it. And then another thing that I included here is I have the kiddos read their sentence every time they finish a word. So after they write I, they read the sentence themselves. I went, they read it again. So just getting them in that process of rehearsing what they've written, planning what they're going to write next, because we all know that it takes a long time for kids to get to the point where they can actually plan, remember, and correctly write a sentence. So that this little scaffold just helps with that. Next, I have an editing checklist. And this is another thing that you might want to put on cardstock because it's just helpful to have throughout the year. And there's actually a couple of different editing checklists in there for different grade levels, K1, 2. And something else you can consider doing is if you haven't taught all of these things and you're like, whoa, this is too much for my kids, what I would do, oh shoot, I'm in my highlighter. I had a highlighter here to show you. You can highlight things that kids are responsible for, right? So maybe when you model how to use an editing checklist and you introduce it to them, you put it in their writing folders, maybe only the first 3 are highlighted. And then as time goes on, you teach other things and the kids are highlighting in their own writing folders on the editing checklist. So you can highlight to draw their attention to certain parts. And then, like I said, I have like 2 or 3 levels of the editing checklist in that freebie for you. So if your kids are, different levels, or maybe they're advancing throughout the year, you can change the checklist of things that they're responsible for. The next tool I have is actually a blank editing checklist. And the reason why I left this blank is for maybe you teach like 2nd grade or even 1st grade or up, and you want your kids to compose their own editing checklist throughout the year. So if they're, if they can write well enough, you can teach them different skills to edit for and just have them build that checklist throughout the year. Or maybe you turn into a revising and editing checklist and you have them build like a list of expectations for the genre or whatever, however you want to use this. I usually use the blank checklist and have the kids write on it 2nd grade and up, but it just depends on your kiddos. You may want to use the pre-printed checklist too, but again, those are in there also. All right, the next tool I want to share with you are these genre checklists. And the editing is more like simple mistakes, capitalization, punctuation, all that good stuff. And this is like the content of the writing. So narrative writing, think of a story you want to tell, talk or write to plan the beginning, middle, and end, write and draw, add details, stuff like that. So again, you can have the kids highlight different things that they're responsible for, because maybe you're starting narrative writing and you have this checklist and you want to use it with them, but this is a lot to start with, right? So maybe, you give them copies and you have them highlight the first one, and then a couple of days later, you've taught them the second skill. So just as you go on, you can have them highlight to show what they're responsible for. This is not something necessarily that I would have them keep in their folders indefinitely. This is just a tool that maybe I'd have them use during our narrative writing genres or units throughout the year, and then I'd have them remove them, or I probably would remove them for them and then replace it with like informational, opinion, or whatever. So this is something that doesn't necessarily need to stay in the folder the whole year, because as you can tell, the folders definitely get full, right? You have certain things that you want to keep in all year, but I do not have them keep all the tools in the entire year, because then they're flipping through stuff and they're not really using all of the tools. I think this is the last one I wanted to show you, but this is a list of transition words and phrases. There's a couple of different options in the freebie for you, but basically this is just kind of like a version of what you might make for the class, like an anchor chart. Again, I just like to have them right in front of them sometimes, because that can be easier for them to use. For some kids, far point copying is difficult, so looking across the classroom and having to copy from there can be difficult, not for all kids, but some kids. So this is a good tool for those kiddos, but just also one to have on hand. Once I teach transition words, I tend to have them leave this in their folder for the entire rest of the year, just because it's an ongoing expectation and it gives them a little bit of help with this. So that, in a nutshell, is what this is the Spanish. This is the Spanish cover, but the English insides. Again, I have both languages. That, in a nutshell, is what is in the writing folder. Like I said, both of those links are in the post for you if you have questions about them. Thanks, Doris. Thanks for watching. If you do have any other questions, like maybe you're watching later, please feel free to just ask them in the comments. I'll get back to you, and I hope you enjoy using these freebies. Thanks so much for watching.